环球网宣传，中共国是全球脱贫事业的榜样。美军驻日冲绳部队一日新增72例新冠病例，超出之前1个月内总和。盗国贼的媒体新华时评虚伪发声，不能让暴雷的蛋壳公寓一走了之。中共开始毫不掩饰地毁掉香港，反对派议员辞职生效，香港从此只有一种声音。环球网登出澳洲官员致电中方表达推特事件的不满，赵立坚拒绝无理指责。中共国大陆极左分子司马南、金灿荣、李毅和李素原来都同属于北京中印网天信息技术公司。环球网贼喊捉贼，工信部责令1336款 APP 因违规收集个人信息整改。环球网洗脑墙内百姓称，美国制裁中国电子进出口公司是因为中国支持委内瑞拉合法政府马杜罗。中共国外交部坚决反对川普政府制裁有中共国军方背景的企业。环球网称，美国骚扰入境中共党员是为了打击强盛的中国，把中共和中国牢牢捆绑。中共国疫情持续爆发，深圳海基新农批市场组织核酸检测，或将新冠病毒甩锅蔬菜。中共国以环保为借口封饭店的锅，老板绝望嚎哭。陕西省一线抗疫护士因消毒液中毒后被院方过河拆桥，禁止复工。
好，第二个马丽仙。
中共国大陆教师命令学生自己夹自己手机，努力教育从娃娃抓起。
王存真，
我就是问一下的，觉得奇怪的，这个车没有车牌的。
关你什么事啊？关你什么事？
那你警车没有车牌？
关你什么事？
你们怎么这种态度呢？你警车是不是你们的嘛？
关你什么事？什么部门的？你什么部门？
不论什么部门，我就是一个市民，也可以质疑。
就是你问什么呀？你没有部门。
我就是一个市民，也可以问啊。
出去！
拥有这个标识意味着每个
中共国银行启动存款保险制度，声称是为了降低中小银行挤兑风险，实则是骗百姓继续安心为党国当韭菜。
金融机构缴纳。
今天看到这个牌子，我更加放心，把钱存在银行里面有这个保障了。
央行上海总部表示，之前正是因为存款保险制度鲜有人知，使得一旦有银行高管犯罪、经营问题产生，部分地区就有储户挤兑现象发生，所以张贴存款保险标识的必要性愈发凸显。
今年以来，我国中小银行的挤兑风险有所上升。但据我们了解，其中有98%的存款人都是50万以下的小额储户，说明他们不知道、不了解、不相信存款保险。使用存款保险标识，它对于稳定存款人的信心、防止挤兑风险、维护金融稳定都有着重要的意义。
咱俩起过几个绰号，他们分别是纸猫。这是相对于美国这个纸老虎说的，对，纸猫啊，还有协警，这也是与美国这个世界警察比较，所以叫它协警。 还有一个，澳大利亚它是粘在中国鞋底的口香糖，很难蹭掉。最新呢，给他们起的绰号是西方文明的城乡结合部。老胡起的这几个绰号，可以说严重伤害了澳大利亚白人至上主义者的感情啊。大家觉得呢？这几个绰号哪一个最形象？
澳大利亚政府应该为此感到羞愧。他们以割喉如此凶残的手法，去残忍地杀害阿富汗的儿童，这是不是事实？澳大利亚的军人派到阿富汗去，是不是
？Look, of course we do observe closely what happens across the ditch, as they do with us. I've seen some of the latest discussion over what was a Twitter image, which we've seen a lot of commentary over. New Zealand has registered directly with Chinese authorities our concern over the use of that image. It was an unfactual post, and of course that would concern us. So that is something that we've raised directly in the manner that New Zealand does when we have such concerns. Well, of course, you know, whether it's Canada or Australia or indeed the United States, we observe closely relationships with our major trading partner China and others, but of course we always conduct our relationship in our own interest. We will speak up on issues that we have concerns about. We will stick to our independent foreign policy, but that doesn't stop us observing what's happening with others. And so, look, whilst that is an exchange that's happening between Australia and China, it will, of course, tip into spaces where, as a general principle, we may have concerns, and we'll raise those. In this case, an image has been used that is not factually correct. It's not a genuine image. So we have raised that directly with Chinese authorities in keeping with the way that we would raise areas of concern for us.
Where you are in this fight?
Yeah, and that's a really important question. And so we're really on two parallel tracks here. So the first is a litigation strategy where we're challenging the fraud and the widespread fraud in court. That's where we're at currently in Pennsylvania. But we also have a parallel track with the state legislatures, and that's why these hearings are so important, because the state legislatures can take back that power at any time. So right now it's important for your audience to understand that certifications don't actually mean anything. Projections don't actually mean anything. Until the Electoral College actually votes on December 14th, we don't have a president-elect.
Jenna, during my interview with the president yesterday, he talked about the Supreme Court. This was his first interview since the election, and I asked him about the possibility of his cases getting in front of the Supreme Court. And what he said was really suggesting that it's difficult to get heard by the Supreme Court. So what about that, Jenna? Will you be able to be heard in front of the Supreme Court?
I believe we will. And President Trump is absolutely right that we have a lot of evidence. We've been denied those hearings at the lower court level. We haven't had an evidentiary hearing to be able to bring forth our witnesses and all of our evidence, but that's why we're doing that in front of the state legislatures. And he's right that it's difficult to get to the Supreme Court because that's the last court of relief. You don't just go into the Supreme Court as original jurisdiction, at least as the campaign. So you can do that in other ways, but it's difficult to get to the Supreme Court on the short timeline that we're operating on because you have to go through all of those lower court stages. But like the president said, I do believe that we will get there. We have multiple vehicles, multiple lawsuits that are headed there. We do have a short time frame, but again, December 14th is when the Electoral College actually votes, and Congress doesn't even certify that until later in January. So that's really our timeline, and we definitely have enough time and enough opportunity, and we have the evidence and the witnesses, and we will show that. I'm very confident.
Carter Page, who just this weekend filed a $75 million lawsuit against the Department of Justice and the FBI. He was a victim of the unlawful spying as part of the special counsel's investigation into Russia. And joining me right now is the man himself, former Trump foreign policy advisor, Carter Page. Carter, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I've got your lawsuit in front of me, and in it, you are suing Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, Kevin Kleinsmith, who we know already pled guilty to lying on a document that was used to get the FISA warrant to spy on you, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Joe Pientka, and the list goes on. Tell me in a nutshell what this lawsuit is about, Carter.
Maria, the lawsuit is really just achieving justice after over 4 years of injustices and one of the greatest civil rights violations by the U.S. intelligence community in American history. The time has finally come. And similar to what you had Congressman Collins on, the conversations you've had with people like Chairman Graham, people have been digging for the truth and trying to get some semblance of justice after these terrible crimes. So this case is an important next step, really an essential step in terms of achieving those objectives.
Calling for a forensic analysis you are of Dominion voting machines, do you think that's going to get done? That's going to get done, number one, and who can we trust to perform this analysis in your view?
Well, that's the many moving parts of this. Who do you trust in all this? I mean, we're looking at it now where the judge has, as you just reported, has basically impounded certain voting machines to make sure they don't wipe the data. Then we find out Fulton County effectively wiped its data because of an IT technician, which appears to be a county employee, used the wrong server for the recount after Dominion told him not to use that server. And just in case that there was a problem, they backed up the data, but they backed it up on the same server that crashed. And so now we're looking at an instance, do we even have the data on the Fulton County servers? We don't know. But there are just so many issues that have to be investigated. And the biggest is the signature verification, which I know the governor has called for, and it's in the purview of our Secretary of State. But he's saying you can't do it. It won't change the outcome of the election. That's fine. But we've got to find out, are there people voting in Georgia that are not supposed to be voting? Because this isn't the only election we have coming up.
As soon as this election moved into the questionable stage, same practice was used. Cover it up, cover it up, cover it up. Big tech, big media, crooked Democratic leaders, big business that profits from the system the way it operates right now. Their desire is to make country not America first, but wherever America should be put so they can make a profit. We could be third, we could be fifth, we could be non-existent as long as they're making a profit. They have no sense of how important this country is to the really to the survival of the world as a decent place. There is no other country that puts its men and women's lives at risk to save other people. That country doesn't exist on earth. It's us. And if we destroy the essential nature of this country, the world's in for a terrible period of time. Well, specifically to this election was the subject of a conspiracy that goes back before the election. A conspiracy that was hatched by the crooked leaders of the Democratic Party. And let me say this to all Democrats. 99% of Democrats are just as honest, just as good, just as decent as Republicans. They may not be as correct on the policies, but we can forgive that. Some of my best friends and relatives are Democrats, and they're not correct on the policies. They believe the same thing about me. But they don't cheat. They don't steal votes. They don't sell public office. The very, very top of the Democratic Party has been corrupted badly since Clinton.
When a judge sits there and orders you not to wipe, not to destroy, not to alter any, how's it to give? I mean, just, I know Linwood asked for it, but the judge concurred with it after hearing both sides. Doesn't that fuel, some of the conspiracy theories, things you're hearing going around right now, where people, there's a lot of talk about smart tech. There's a lot of talk about Dominion systems, everything from they're doing raids on server farms in Frankfurt to, Mao Zedong put up the capital for here, and then everything in between. And some of it's factually based, some of it is speculative, some of it is in the world of fantasy. But you've got very serious people and serious teams that are trying to go through under enormous pressure and tie this together. Doesn't that right there fuel it? And I'm not saying the judge shouldn't say it, but I mean, this gets to the point of what people are saying. Hey, there's a problem here. When you have to have a judge tell guys, hey, don't wipe, don't destroy, and you shouldn't put your hands on any of this. Pencils down. Mr. Beatty.
Yes, I mean, it looks suspicious to me. I'm not, the area that I've focused on in most kind of specificity in terms of electoral regularities comes, it's related to the ballot spikes. And that's kind of the story that I feel most equipped to talk about. But definitely irregularities related to the machines, I think those should be fully explored. And if anything comes up, that's an issue that should definitely be tackled.
So the ballot spikes, let's go. You had this lead story. When did you put this story up? Because it was on fire. It was everywhere over the internet, and people were calling about it all the time. When did you put it up?
Yeah, this story has really been blowing up. It's been up for about 5 days. It's a summary of a larger study, and the larger study is important as a matter of record. If people are interested, I encourage them to look at the whole study. Revolver.news has worked with the people who put together the study to put together a more digestible summary, and that's been available. It's been pinned at Revolver.news for several days. It's absolutely blowing up. Recently, Rand Paul tweeted the original study. It's very powerful, and it's done in very much the same vein as the Montgomery County expose that Revolver.news did, very deep statistical dive. This study uses a similar approach, but looks at vote spike anomalies that occur in other states, principally Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And it's actually quite shocking when you look at the numbers.
So walk us through I know it's shocking. Walk us through and if we could get that, if the guys have the article, if we can put it up on
the article. Yep, the article on Revolver.news is titled simply and accurately enough, the definitive case proving Donald Trump won the election. So what is this all about? Again, this is referencing a larger and more thorough analysis that I would encourage the statistically inclined members of your audience to look at. This is a summary just giving the bare bones that's easily digestible, shareable everywhere. So what's the big deal here? In summary, this analysis calls the legitimacy of a critical period into question. That is this 5-hour period during which there were several vote spikes that were so statistically anomalous they could only really be accounted for by means of fraud. And so this study looks at 2 vote spikes in Michigan, 1 vote spike in Wisconsin, and 1 vote spike in Georgia. Again, these all occurred within a 5-hour period, and each of these spikes is so statistically anomalous, it's beyond the 99th percentile. In fact, if these spikes were only anomalous up to the 99th percentile, the election would have gone to Trump. And so what this study shows is not only how weird these particular spikes are, these crucial spikes in exactly the place that Biden needed it, at this suspicious 5-hour window, when, remember, with Trump in the lead, all of these key places just decided in this weird coordinated fashion to stop counting. Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia. Remember that supposed pipe leak in Georgia that never really happened? This was all coordinated. So in this crucial 5-hour period, you have the most anomalous vote spikes in the entire election. And again, if these were only anomalous up to 99th percentile, only like 1% chance, Trump still would have won. They're anomalous within to the 10th of a percent chance. And there are all kinds of anomalies addressed in the summary, including the fact that the spikes themselves are totally out of keeping with additional vote counts. So if you have a spike that's dramatically for Biden, you would expect additional smaller spikes to reflect that same distribution. That is not the case with any of these 4 anomalous spikes. So it really just drills down into this larger narrative of what I think all of the most reliable vote fraud narratives really track, which is that you had Trump ahead in key places. These key places all suspiciously and curiously suspended vote counting. And in this 5-hour window, you had these huge statistically anomalous, really statistically impossible batches come in precisely the places that Biden needed it, only in those places, in this dark 5-hour window. And that's what made up the difference. And so this just drills down into the various peculiarities of this, but that's the broader narrative that this reinforces.
Okay, I just want to go back. We got a couple of minutes, and I know you're a mathematician and a serious political philosopher. Go back, you said it only could come about because of fraud. Just walk the audience back through there. What is the level of certainty that leads these mathematicians and statisticians to that conclusion?
Well, I mean, in a precise sense, something that is, only 0.00001 chance of occurring, it's still, possible according to the physical laws of the universe. It's just so unlikely that if there are any more plausible explanations, plausible narratives, namely voter fraud, I think we have to avail ourselves of those explanations. And as I said, we're dealing with like 4 extremely curious vote spikes. They all occur within this highly suspicious 5-hour period of, dead of night vote counting. They're so anomalous, that is, they're so outside of the norm, that if they were only 99% out of the norm, Trump would have won. They're out of the norm by 99.9%, and they're all the same, and they don't track any of the additional, like the vote ballots that came in after or the vote ballots that came in before. So really, like any reasonable person looking at these numbers, given the context, would really have to conclude that there's something really fishy going on here, especially when you see in Georgia.
当你某种东西断的时候，比如说粮食不够的时候，石油不够的时候，你的外汇完全不够的时候，你这个国家就会回到文化大革命大跃进的时候，你根本不会存在什么经济，因为你根本人就像死人一样了，没有循环，没有外汇，没有生产链，没有粮食，更没有所谓的供应链，整个哗就会倒下来，这就是共产党的疯狂的，他竟然在全世界从过去的解决衣食问题让这个国家基本富裕问题，然后走向依法治国，直接就干到要挑战全世界，给全世界把脉，让全世界听他的，然后就当全世界的神，然后让全世界遵守共产主义的代价。美国这次行动，战友们，你可以说要多大有多大，这在过去是不可能的据说在台湾这个问题上，美国也认识到了他们一定会打台湾打台湾以后，美国要不要行动，也几乎决定了美国在亚洲未来有没有哥们儿，人有没有人给你。美国不去保台湾，日本会再相信美国吗？印度会再相信美国吗？马六甲海峡的这个印度还相信你美国能保护我们吗？中东就更不相信你了那欧洲就更别说了，谁跟你玩对吧美国也没选择，你必须要进入你进入以后跟共产党之间你想长期打仗那共产党死了，不是中国人打烂了，你也完了那就世界就乱了，是吧？只有一个斩首，只有一个快速行动所以说美国现在定了个战略在经济上技术上必须一个反封锁，饿死他们然后第二个就是快速斩首行动，你们信不信，战友们？
美国为感染病例和住院人数持续激增做好了准备。日本放宽了因病毒大流行而被限制的外国人的工作规定。菲律宾将部分的病毒社会限制措施延长至2020年底。一项新的研究表明，在第二次全国封锁期间，英格兰的感染数量已大约减少了30%。莫德纳证实已于今天向 FDA 申请了冠状病毒疫苗的授权。 美国表示，它将限制与中国电子进出口公司的交易，并冻结有该公司持有50%或以上股份的任何公司的资产。网络星期一将成为美国历史上最大的在线购物日。加拿大计划在2022年对 Facebook、Google 等全球科技巨头征收数字税。
Dear mama, are you okay over there? Your son is crying and missing you and sees you in his dreams. You said take down the CCP, cause it's God's will, it's God's will. So I'll wait for you and I'll see you when we end the CCP, yeah. So